possibly more trouble for the Government of National Unity following President Ramaphosa's decision to sack the Deputy Minister for Trade and Industry, Andrew Whitfield, also a member of the Democratic Alliance. That's obviously annoyed then the DA, which has now given the President 48 hours to basically then apply the same rule or fire ministers and deputy ministers from the ANC who've been accused of involvement in corruption and other misconduct. Let's bring in SABC News politics editor Mzwandile Mbeje, who's with us on set this evening. So good to see you. So at the heart of Andrew Whitfield sacking is an unauthorized trip to Washington. What do we know about the circumstances of that trip?
Well, though the circumstances aren't clear at this stage, but perhaps the individuals that he was with may not necessarily have been palatable. And also, Tembekile, remember, around the time of the trip, the relations between South Africa and the US were not at their best. So clearly, a lot was expected from, I guess, those who are in South Africa and are in authority. So they needed to be seen to be singing from the same hymn sheet,
yes, right?
Yes. So now you have a member of your own executive do this kind of a trip, and then without you authorizing it, you may not necessarily have been privy to the nature of to the engagement, but the fact that you signaled that you were not happy about it, and then it still goes ahead. So clearly that may have unsettled, obviously, the president.
And interesting enough, when you look at the history of South African presidents firing members of cabinet or others who serve in the capacity of a minister or a deputy, it's not the first time we've been here. In fact, in 1994, when you look it up, Winnie Madikizela Mandela was fired by the then President Nelson Mandela. She traveled to Ghana on an unauthorized trip. Fast forward to 2007, Nozizwe Magala Routledge, the minister for health, deputy minister, in fact, for health at the time, sacked by then President Thabo Mbeki on similar grounds. And now we've got Andrew Whitfield and the Ramaphosa administration. Let's perhaps talk about why it is that presidents take such umbrage to members of the executive or their deputies going on these trips without permission.
I think when all is said and done, I mean, if you run a company, so you are in charge of that company. So if then there are people within your fold who then do as they please, what's the point of them being there? Because clearly, whatever instruction you dish out, no one is listening to them. So if you have programs that you need to implement in a particular way, and then you have a member that you already not sure if he or she will follow that program, you can't. And remember, at this level, this is a very high level, these are people who are sworn to secrecy, who are sworn to very important information. So if then you are still able to then do as you please, and it won't sit well, particularly with the president.
But John Steenhuisen, the leader of the DA, was furious this afternoon. They've now issued a 48-hour ultimatum to President Ramaphosa, basically, to then do what he's done on the right, on the left, i.e. sack Minister Thembi Simelane, Fire Minister of Higher Education Nobuhle Nkabane, and Deputy Minister David Mahlobo, based on allegations that have been made against them in the past. What happens if he doesn't?
I am not sure if the DA has not stretched itself beyond what is perhaps reasonable in this context. I'll tell you why. As much as they are in the Government of National Unity, GNU, once the president, Tembekile, is elected, he has all the powers of being the president. So when it comes to the issue of appointing or dismissing ministers or deputy ministers, it is his own prerogative. So that is why, even in the dismissal, so he doesn't have to give us any reasons because he is constitutionally empowered to do that.
Someone in the Zuma years says the president has the power to appoint and disappoint.
And disappoint, yes. So basically what the DA is doing, obviously they are using the fact that they are in the Government of National Unity, but I don't think it will sit well with the president. But also, again, this is politics. Perhaps they are daring the president to see what he's going to do. I mean, there's no way the president will be told by a party to act in a particular way within a particular time frame, and then he does that. And that raises the tensions within the GNU. Already, these tensions had arisen about a month ago or more than a month ago, but somehow they found a way of dealing with them. So they are rising again. And perhaps that reconfiguration of the GNU is a real possibility.
But Mzwandile, what is the possibility? What happens? What are the options is what I'm trying to figure out for the Democratic Alliance if they don't get President Ramaphosa to yield on this. Bella was a big flashpoint between the ANC and the DA and the GNU. The Expropriation Act was another big issue. They managed to find common ground, if you can put it that way, even on the budget. But what if then, in 48 hours, the president says, my mind is not changed? What does that leave? What choice does it leave the DA?
I think the DA is left with, I would say, two choices. You are left with the choice of continuing despite the fact that your wish was not granted. You continue. But remember, once you do that, somehow politically you get weakened. Because remember, this is politics at the end of the day. Or they can just take a bold decision, which I don't think they are ready for it. But I don't know, when perhaps FedEx could just come to that determination, they can take a bold decision to say, you know what, we feel we are being treated very unfairly. Perhaps it's time for us to walk out of this GNU.
But could there be a sweetener from the president, i.e. taking another DA person and putting them in the same job?
That could be a possibility, and I think the president will probably do that. Or the president might then use this opportunity to perhaps rearrange or reshuffle the cabinet, maybe in the coming weeks. Perhaps, because remember, he's empowered to do that. But I do still think that position, even if it's not that specific position, would still be, that space will still be reserved for the DA. But again, if then he then reconfigures the GNU, so that position could be lost.
And when you look at the people, John Steenhuisen names in a statement today from the ANC, who he thinks should also be shown the door. Thembisi Melani, there was that issue around a VBS facilitator, for want of a better phrase, who was involved in her getting a loan for a coffee shop in Sandton. That was then ultimately what led to her being removed from the Justice Ministry, if I recall correctly.
Yeah, and you'll remember that one of the things that the president did was to ask the minister to give an explanation of what transpired. And that report obviously was submitted to the president, so we're not privy to it, so we don't know what exactly the minister said to the president, but clearly the president was satisfied because he still kept her in the cabinet.
And what about Minister Dr. Nobuhle Ngabane? Because her troubles, in fact, are ongoing, right? Because the Higher Education Portfolio Committee is still not convinced that she's been honest around the mess that surrounds the appointment of CETA boards. That's
why I think the meeting of the NEC, I think in 2 weeks, remember, as much as he's the president, I mean, he belongs to a party, so he does need to touch base with his party. That's why I think the NEC may give some sort of a direction in terms of what he needs to do. Or even if he wants to take a decision, perhaps he may want to then check with his own base, with his own party. But clearly that matter, I do think one way or the other will be attended to, because there's been a lot of public outcry around this.
David Maklobo, do you think the president will be willing to give him up as deputy president when you consider the years of him being linked to alleged misconduct?
I don't think so, because no new information has come other than that we've always known. So he appointed him despite the available information relating to Zondo.
Thank you very much. Mzwandile Mbeje, SABC News politics editor, speaking to us about the latest from the president's office.